Also, I'm then going to talk about what we can learn from off-label prescribing, which I'll get into in a few minutes. First of all, what do physicians say about FDA delay? Okay. Well, when you ask them, the FDA is too slow in approving new medical drugs and devices, 61% of physicians agree, 37% disagree. Okay. Pretty strong agreement that the FDA is too slow in approving new medical drugs and devices. This is a survey of 160 oncologists. The additional time it takes for the FDA to approve medical drugs and devices costs lives by forcing people to go without potentially beneficial therapies. 60% agree, 39% disagree. So I think physicians, unlike most people in the street, okay, they actually do understand these costs and these benefits a little bit better, okay, than most people to whom the FDA is a pure white knight. Let me talk about off-label prescribing. There's something very interesting about prescribing pharmaceutical prescriptions in the United States. It's illegal to sell a new drug in the United States until clinical trials evaluating the drug's safety and efficacy have been performed to the FDA's satisfaction. However, once a drug has been approved for some use, it can be used for any use. Once a drug has been approved for some use, it can be used for anything. Okay, the FDA, by and large, does not regulate medical practice. So once a drug has been approved for some use, it can be used for other uses. And in fact, this off-label prescribing, okay, so-called because the drug is prescribed for a use which is not on the label, and the label is what the drug was approved for. Okay? Off-label prescribing is very common. Most hospital patients will receive at least one drug off-label, at least will be prescribed at least one drug off-label. For some drugs, the majority of use is off-label. So the majority of use for some drugs is for something the drug was not originally approved for. And the off-label use can actually be very different than the on-label use. Thalidomide is actually back. Okay? Thalidomide, it turns out, okay, is very useful for the use of leprosy. It also turns out that it's useful for certain cancers. It is approved for leprosy. Okay, it is also used, in fact, it is used more often than it is used for leprosy. We don't have much leprosy anymore. But thalidomide is now used more often for cancer, for certain forms of cancer. Okay? So off-label prescribing is very common in the United States. Now, why? Why do doctors prescribe off-label? Okay? Why would they prescribe something for which the drug has not been approved? Well, first reason is that medical knowledge advances faster than does the FDA. Let me give you an example. Quinaquine was originally approved for malaria. Okay? A few years ago, however, there were some early trials in Japan which suggested, it didn't prove, but suggested that quinaquine was also effective for mad cow disease, for BJD. Okay? Within months of that finding being made in Japan, quinaquine was being used in San Francisco for the treatment of BJD. Now what's interesting about that is that if quinaquine had been a new drug, it would have had to have gone through FDA safety and efficacy trials. It could have been 10, 12, 15 years at millions of dollars before that drug could have been prescribed. Instead, within months of this scientific information becoming available, physicians in San Francisco and elsewhere in the United States were prescribing this drug for BJD. They could do that because quinaquine had originally been approved 40 years earlier for something completely different, for malaria. So once a drug has been approved for some use, it can be approved for any use, and scientific discoveries and research is going on all the time, which suggests new uses for old drugs. New uses for old drugs. Very common. And in fact, it's not at all uncommon to find that the gold standard, okay, for treatment, cutting-edge treatment for AIDS or for cancer, for these rapidly moving fields, it's not at all uncommon that what is considered the best is actually an off-label treatment. So that's one reason. Medical knowledge advances faster than the FDA. Second, standard therapies, as we know, sometimes fail. So you have some patients who have a life-threatening disease. They've tried the standard therapy. It has not worked. There's some information, perhaps it's limited information, quite understandably limited information, right? Why not give it a try? This often happens. In fact, a number of new discoveries are made in the field when physicians, based upon limited information, try out new ideas. If the standard therapy has failed, it can be quite rational for a patient to say, look, I understand that there's only limited information in favor of this drug being effective in this use, but what other choice do I have? The third reason is that patients are heterogeneous. Okay? Very heterogeneous, as I'm sure you know. What works in one patient may not work in another patient. What benefits one patient can harm another. Okay? So simply increasing the number of drugs in the toolbox of physicians, okay, in the arsenal of physicians, can be very useful. The more tools, the more possibilities they have to draw from, okay, the greater the ability to adjust treatment to what Hayek would have called the circumstances of time and place. In other words, to the particular patient. Okay? Patients have different genes, and they have also different preferences. Okay? What is to one patient a minor issue may be a major issue to another patient. This may require different treatments. Okay? And having a wider spectrum of drugs available, including off-label uses, allows physicians to better accommodate that heterogeneity. Each of these reasons is also a reason to allow physicians to prescribe new drugs that are not yet FDA approved. I'm going to come back to that, but I just want to mention it. Get you thinking about that for a few minutes. So what do physicians say about off-label prescribing? Okay. And here's some survey evidence. A colleague and I asked a number of physicians, what would be your position on a proposal to change FDA law so that physicians could not prescribe drugs for off-label uses? Would you favor or oppose such a change? Okay. It was very clear, 2% favored, 94% opposed, few said, I'm not sure. Okay. So the vast majority of physicians, in fact, we allowed them to send us additional comments, said that would be crazy. Okay? Forbidding physicians to prescribe off-label would have a serious detrimental effect on patients.